Bucknutters, welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, October 26th, 2018. I am Dave Biddle, very happy to be joined by Jonah Booker for his usual Friday visit. JBook, I want to start off by talking about something you tweeted a couple days ago that I thought was right on point. Just explain to the listeners how much you think all the talk from people like Paul Finebaum that Urban Meyer could step down after this season is hurting recruiting right now, and just how ESPN, that's really just, it's bad ethics on their part to put him out there just so he can basically hurt Ohio State's recruiting is how it looks.
Yeah, I think it's really shady on ESPN part. Basically, a couple days ago, this past Wednesday, ESPN pretty much had Paul Finebaum on the car wash. And what that is they had him on multiple shows, multiple platforms. They started him off first thing in the morning on the Golick and Wingo show. Well, the topic was on the Golick and Wingo show. And then they had him on First Take with Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman. Then after that, they put him on the Stephen A. Smith show, and then he had his own actual show. And pretty much the theme of it was, is this Urban Meyer's last season at Ohio State? A pure speculative topic, but ESPN went full throttle with it, and Paul Finebaum was the one that they used to put out in front to beat the drum. That is totally wrong on ESPN to pretty much create a narrative. They're basing this based off Paul Finebaum's personal opinion. And to me, that's very shady on their part because there's no documented proof. There's no evidence. If they are hearing something, it's pretty much hearsay. But to go on your national platform on all of your shows and let that be one of your biggest topics that you're going to be talking about is just wrong. And essentially what they're doing is giving ammunition to other coaches across the country to use it in recruiting for Ohio State to say, see, Urban Meyer's on his back nine, as Dabo said. He's not going to be around Ohio State very much longer. Look at him. Look at his body language on the sidelines. You hear what ESPN is saying. Ohio State's going to have a new coach while you're there. Urban's not going to be there. And so, to me, I just think that it doesn't do Ohio State any favors. They know they're going to rile up the Buckeye fan base. It's great for ratings, but I think it's just a personal shot at Urban Meyer and the Buckeyes here.
So what do you think is going to happen? I know this is the billion-dollar question. No one really knows the answer, maybe not even Urban Meyer at this point. If he had to be the first coach since Paul Brown to go out on his own terms, if you consider World War II his own terms at Ohio State, it's truly been the graveyard of coaches for much longer than you and I have been alive, that's for sure. What do you think, if Urban Meyer could kind of pick how it all ends, what do you think he wants to do? Do you think he wants to stay around for 3 more years, through next year? Just what do you think he wants to do?
If it was up to Urban, and this is just purely me just trying to talk through your question here, is I would think that he would like to win at least another national championship at Ohio State and probably go off and retire being a grandfather, spending time with his family and grandchildren. To me right now, obviously Ohio State has to work themselves back into the hunt here, but are we talking about a situation where he's burnt out right now? When you see him in the way this team is performing and you see his body language on the sidelines, it's fair to question if he has any juice left in the tank. Maybe that, the whole saga with Zach Smith and the suspension really took a greater toll on him than what a lot of people really anticipated. But, the perfect scenario for him to at least get at least another national championship here, and then he kind of go off on his own terms. Now, I can't see a situation where Ohio State will fire Urban Meyer or anything like that, like you've seen in past coaches. But I could see a situation here where he's just like, I can't do this any longer. I'm exhausted. I'm wore out. I can't deal with the drama. And it really doesn't help the situation the way Ohio State president and board of trustees and the whole fiasco really didn't have his back this summer going on with the Zach Smith situation. So I think that will play a part in his decision come this off season as well.
I want to get back to recruiting for a second. I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, but just, I mean, obviously this is affecting recruiting. I mean, there's just no way of getting around it. You know, I'm sure they're always being negatively recruited. I know Dabo had been negatively recruiting, as you mentioned, for a while. Just how much do you think this is hurting Ohio State's recruiting efforts?
I think it's hurting. I mean, right now, what are these kids? I mean, as much as a lot of Buckeye fans hate ESPN and they boycott it, everyone's not in that mind frame. So whenever you hear things on the radio and you see things on TV, which ESPN is going to draw the majority of the eyes across the country, there's nothing really positive being drummed up about Ohio State right now. And I think it is hurting recruiting. I mean, when you have your coach being discussed as being in his final year at the school, it's going to give pause to recruits. Now, and a lot of people is in the strong belief that Urban needs to get out in front of this. Like, if he doesn't, in the Ohio State PR department doesn't figure out how to get out in front of this and shoot down the rumors, then it's going to continue to affect recruiting heading into early signing day period coming up in December. So that's the question that you have to, you know, we're all going to have to ask Urban, you know, in his press conference eventually is, hey, what do you think about these rumors? Because if he doesn't get out in front of this, it's going to continue to linger on. And you better believe if Ohio State continues to struggle, the Paul Finebaums of the world will be out in full force, even stronger by ESPN, because they already smell blood in the water. If Ohio State doesn't figure out a way to stop it, it's only going to continue to get stronger.
All right, let's move past that and just look at the team itself. I think the bye week came at a great time. Normally, you know, whether I didn't, you know, in sports, whether I'm a fan or if I was actually playing or coaching, if you know, my team lost, I'd want to get back out there as fast as possible usually. Just look at last year, Ohio State lost to Iowa and they got back out there and just blew the doors off Michigan State the next week. But I think this bye comes at a good time for Ohio State because they need to make some serious tweaks. Can't overhaul things, but they need to make some serious tweaks. Just I guess, you know, what's your confidence level? Let's just forget about them winning the national championship for a second. I don't even know if that's a possibility. Let's just forget about that for a second. What is your confidence level, JBook, that they can run the table and at least win the Big Ten championship this year? Beat Michigan, win the Big Ten title.
I mean, that it just depends on if they actually fix their problems, which is a major schematical issue on defense and just the ability to run the football. If they can fix those things, which is a big ask here right now going into week 9 of the season, then I'm of the mind frame that they can win out. If I had to put a number on it, I'm saying 80-85%, because we've seen Ohio State correct issues before. They bounced back from horrendous losses, and they came back with a little bit more pep in their step. But I'm cautiously optimistic that they're going to be able to fix what is happening here. We've already heard that the coaches, you know, they said some good things in regards to schemes and personnels and not changing a whole lot, but trying to tweak some things within the system to see if they can make it work. So I'm skeptical that they're going to be able to get it all corrected because they are who they are. I mean, the personnel is who it is right now. But if they find a way to actually get it figured out, I have confidence that they can handle their business and run the table as far as their remaining Big Ten schedule. I mean, Michigan, those guys, they're coming in. This is probably going to be the best Michigan team that Ohio State has faced since 2006, the game with Troy Smith when he sealed his Heisman. So I think this is going to be the best Michigan team that they have faced in years.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about Michigan. I mean, they looked like the same old Michigan against Notre Dame. That was with Wimbush at quarterback. But they've changed. I give Ed Warner credit. Ed Warner was completely over his head as an offensive coordinator, as we all know. But as an O-line coach, he was fantastic. And I really wish he was still Ohio State's offensive line coach. But, you look at Michigan now, they look legit to me. I mean, Shea Patterson, while not a savior, is by far the best quarterback they've had since Harbaugh's been there. I know it's a very, very low bar. The offensive line isn't a joke. That's been the problem. The biggest problem with Michigan, I think, has been their inability to run the ball basically since Rich Rod got there. And they're able to run the ball now. We'll see if they can do it against Ohio State. But they have opened my eyes a couple games. And their defense obviously is really, really good. But I guess my question for you, so talk more about Michigan. You already talked how you think they're really good. We agree on that. But might we be talking them up a little, or are we a little too cautious about Michigan? Are people like me guilty of maybe talking them up too much?
I think Michigan is legit. And the reason I say that is because of their defense. Don Brown has turned that into a salty defense year in and year out. I mean, those guys are actually smothering people, and that's without Rashawn Gary. So if Rashawn Gary decides he actually wants to play and not pull the Bosa, then they're going to be even better right now. So I just look at their defense. That's who really sets the tone for them. And then you pair Don Brown, who's always ticked off, and he has his defense playing ticked off, with Ed Warner. Ed is doing what Ed does best, and that's just developing an offensive line from guys who was really cast aside. As you mentioned, their running attack. Karan Higdon has reeled off 6 straight 100-yard games, and that's a lot of credit goes to Ed Warner really getting that offensive line. And the thing that if you follow Michigan and just kind of just monitor from afar on what they're saying and what they're doing, it's completely different attitude there. There's a lot of confidence coming out of Ann Arbor. When you have the offensive line talking that they're the best offensive line in the country and they're feeling like they're the best unit of the entire Michigan program, that kind of tells you the mind frame. Now, you may not believe it, but if Ed has those kids in that room believing that they're the best offensive line and they're having the numbers to show for it with 6 straight 100-yard rushing attack, then that's going to continue to build. Right now, I would say Michigan is in a position to where they're starting to play their best football heading into November. Ohio State is regressing, so that kind of gives you a little bit of pause there. One, your rival is starting to play their best ball when it matters, and you touched on Shea Patterson. The thing that Shea Patterson is doing is he's not all-world, but he's not making the critical mistakes that you saw from Michigan quarterbacks in the past, and he's good enough to actually make a few plays, especially with his legs and getting outside the pocket and finding wide-open receivers. Their offense is not spectacular by any imagination. I mean, if you look at it, it was pretty much 7-7 and going into the fourth quarter of that Michigan State game until Donovan Peoples-Jones took that long ball to the house. But other than that, I mean, they are solid. If Ohio State can't figure out how to run the football, Don Brown will have that pressure dialed up on Dwayne Haskins. That's why it's going to be critical for Ohio State to find a semblance of balance, especially heading into November when you go up to Michigan State, because you better believe D'Antonio will have his guys fired up for that game regardless how banged up they are.
Great knowledge, as usual, from Jonah Booker. Thank you very much, JBook. You can catch him on Twitter at JBook37. You can catch his column on Bucknuts. It is outside Columbus. So thank you, JBook, and thanks to all listeners out there for tuning in to the show. Hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Let's try the Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.